short Maamar. Either we will finish it today or we'll finish it tomorrow. If not tomorrow, we'll finish it during Chol Hamoed. So the Maamar the Rebbe said on Yud Gimel Nissan, which is the yahrzeit of the Tzemach Tzedek, in the year Tav Shemem Tes, which was interesting was at that point the Rebbe was not saying Maamar often. I'm not mistaken, this possibly was one of the last Maamar, if not the last Maamar the Rebbe said. The Rebbe came to seemingly what everyone thought would be a sicha, and the Rebbe asked to sing the Maamar Nigun, and the Rebbe started to say the Maamar of Matzah Zu. This is similar to the topic that we learned about in the Torah this week. So let's see the sicha. The Maamar. The Rebbe says, Matzah Zu She'anu Ochlim. Again, this is a quote from the Haggadah that says, this matzah that we're eating now, why are we eating it? So in the Baal Haggadah continues, because the dough of our forefathers when they left Egypt didn't have time to rise, to turn into leaven. God came, redeemed them, and we had to rush out, and they didn't have time to bake the matzahs. Meaning to say that, again, like we learned in the Torah, that the eating of the matzahs is because it's a technicality, seemingly. That's why we eat the matzahs. So it's brought down in the memoriam of the Rebbes. The very fact that the Baal Haggadah says that the reason we're eating matzah is because to remember how the Jewish people left Egypt, and at that point the dough didn't have time to rise, and they ate matzah. Although like we learned again in the Torah, this is ideas that was brought out. Although that God told Moshe Rabbeinu on the Rosh Chodesh Nissan to tell the Jewish people on the 10th of Nissan to take the lamb and slaughter it on the 14th and eat it al matzahs yachlu, matzahs yachlu. They should eat it with matzah. So they had a commandment in the Torah to eat matzah. That's why we eat matzah, and that's the same thing. The matzah, which is seemingly what we eat by the Seder, which is connected to the matzah we eat by the Korban Pesach, which is on the 14th in the evening, going into the 15th. So the reason is, why do we say that this matzah is connected to the idea of the matzah that when they left Egypt, that didn't have time to rise, not connected to the matzah that the Jewish people ate and were commanded to eat on the 14th in Egypt? So the Rebbe answers, because in that commandment, the Moshe Rabbeinu told the Jewish people, it says, that on the evening, meaning going from the 14th, going into the 15th, they slaughter on the 14th and going into the 15th, because they only left Egypt on the 15th afternoon, meaning midday of the 15th. So here they're slaughtering the Korban Pesach 14th by night and eating in that evening with the Korban Pesach, like is the Seder, on the 14th by evening, going into the 15th by night, and they eat it the matzah with the Korban Pesach. So it says, because in the commandment with regard to eating the matzahs, for the Jewish people then in Egypt on the eve of the 15th, it says, Be'erev techel matzahs, on the evening you should eat matzahs, and the matzahs is written chaser vav without a vav. It means matzah could be spelled mem tzadik vav tav, which would be matzos, using the vav as the vowel, or you could just remove the vav and use the vowel of l'chayla. When it talks about that the Jewish people ate matzahs leaving Egypt because they didn't have time for the dough to rise, then it says matzahs, it says matzah with a vav. Now we know, as we're going to explain, that the vav is not just, the sound is the same, matzos. The difference is, and we've learned this before with regard to the word kodesh. You could spell kodesh kuf dalet shin or kuf dal vav shin. When there's a vav inserted in the word, especially when we're talking about things like matzah, kodesh, is a question. The vav is coming to show that there's a hamshacha, something's being brought down. There is an avoda. There's a connection. It's like a line that goes from top to the bottom. The vav actually represents a yud. The top of the vav is a yud as it extends downwards. So here there's interaction. It's not just kodesh, for instance, kodesh going into the world, or kodesh milim megamei. It's just a word separate, not because it's separate from the world, interact vis-a-vis the world. So to the matzah, are we talking about matzah with regard to avoida, with our efforts, or is it matzah just matzah? So that tziveh lechilus matzah hu koydim chatzos. The commandment that the Jewish people had to eat matzah then was they had to eat it before midnight, before with the midnight at the chatzos of when the death of the firstborn started. At that point, they were still in Egypt. They only left again at chatzos midday of the next day, which was 12 hours later. This is all before the revelations of God. Therefore, there is no vav. Why? Because there's no hamshacha, there's no avodah. There hasn't yet been the revelation. If there's a revelation of Melech Malchem Lachem Chodesh Baruch Hu, that's the idea of the vav. Like I say, a vav is a yud that extends downwards. But there was no revelation. But when it says that they ate matzahs when they left Egypt, there says matzahs with a vav. We talk about the matzahs that they baked after they left Egypt because they didn't have time to bake them in Egypt. With the dough that they left from Egypt, took out from Egypt. This was after Chatzos. It means after Hashem revealed himself to the Jewish people, the Goyim and redeemed them. So this is pre-revelation or after revelation. We're going to learn there's two things. There's revelation after revelation. There's avodah and there's no avodah. Means there's the way we affect things, that's avodah. So do we get a handout, or there's no avodah, or there is avodah and it's not a handout, it's based on our efforts. And there's the second concept of the matzahs before the revelation of Hashem or after the revelation of Hashem. So now the first part is about the revelation. The matzahs the Jewish people ate on the night of leaving Egypt, there was no revelation. That's why there's no vav, because to indicate that it was pre-revelation. So the vav in this case is referring to Hashem coming down into the world. It wasn't nigla leh mach machem lachem kadosh baruch hu. The matzahs they ate afterwards, although it was technical seemingly because they didn't have time to bake the bread, but nevertheless, those matzahs were after the revelation because they left Egypt. The revelation came with them leaving Egypt. The Goyim, God revealed Himself. Nigla aleihem melech machem kadosh baruch hu. God revealed Himself. Goyim and revealed and redeemed them. This was after midday, after the matzahs after chatzos. After God revealed Himself and redeemed them. Therefore, is the vav to indicate the revelation. And that's also the matzahs before Pesach, because there was no revelation before chatzos. It says you have to watch the matzah. There's concern over here. Why? This is a matzah because there's no revelation yet. It could be feeding a bad energy. It could be feeding ego. Chametz is wheat, is leavened. But the matzahs that they baked afterwards, after there was a revelation, they didn't happen to become chametz. Not because they had to have a special shmirah. Why? Again, like we learned in the Torah, at that point there was a revelation. And the revelation took care of the concern that could come that the revelation itself made sure there wouldn't be any chametz, any elevation, any ego. The dough on its own didn't become leavened, didn't rise. Because the matzahs after chatzos, after midnight, was matzahs that with the vav, and the vav indicates there's a revelation. The revelation of God revealed Himself, and He redeemed them. Therefore, there's no concern. Meaning to say like this: we have two matzahs. We have the matzahs without a vav, indicating there has not yet been revelation. Now we're talking about the matzahs as far as vis-a-vis God's revelation. It's pre-revelation, though there was a mitzvah. Whereas the matzahs that were after chatzos, after the revelation, were not with a mitzvah. The unwritten commandment to make those matzahs. Similarly, they were technical. But with relationship to what type of matzahs they were, the matzahs before chatzos, because there was no revelation, therefore there's no vav to show us that. At the same time, there has to be shmir, there has to be a watchful, so that it doesn't become chametz because it's vulnerable. Whereas the matzahs that come after, although there was no commandment for those matzahs, but the matzahs themselves didn't become chametz because the revelation protected that there shouldn't be the negative idea of chametz. Okay, so that's so far what we have in the two levels of the matzah. So we're getting closer to say, what matzah are we eating? Are we eating the matzah? This matzah that we're eating now by the Seder. Are we eating the matzah that's connected to the matzah the Jewish people in Egypt ate before the revelation? Or are we eating the matzah that's post-revelation, but matzahs with a vav? At the same time, there's a kind of matzah that didn't need shimur, which we do have shimur. So you have to kind of put two things together. There's this idea that there is any difference between the matzahs before the revelation. After revelation is only the first Pesach. If they Matan Torah, before there's the giving of the Torah. After that, the Pesach following that, and every year after that, was after not only the Jewish people left Egypt, but after they were given the Torah, which means, what does it mean by giving the Torah? Now they have the ability to be effective with Torah mitzvahs in a way they never were able to be. Means although they had commandments before, starting from Avram had a bris, and although we say that Avram's bris was similar to the mitzvahs of after Matan Torah. We have other commandments like the Gidanasha and other things, and here we have matzah, we have Korban Pesach, but it doesn't come. The Matan Torah didn't just give us more mitzvahs. Matan Torah gave us the mitzvahs on a totally another scale. That means things that were the ability to connect the Gashmis and Ruchnis, Elyonim and Tachtonim, physical and spiritual, that only happened by Matan Torah. Therefore, when we say talk about Shabbos, although Shabbos was told to the Jewish people in Morah, we say Kasher Tzivisicha. You have to say it again in Matan Torah. So Matan Torah doesn't just affect the quantity of the quantity of the laws, but the quality of the laws on a totally another level. Something that was totally not able to be done before Matan Torah. So therefore, when we do Pesach the next year, it means the year following the exodus of Egypt, and that was after Matan Torah, because Matan Torah was 49 days, 50 days after they left Egypt. So now we're talking about a whole other level of matzah and a whole another level of Pesach. So therefore he says the matzah, that there was a difference before and after, was only before Matan Torah. That in the first matzah that he ate, there was no revelation. The second one was revelation, but still not the revelation of Matan Torah. And nevertheless, Matan Torah, once Torah was given. Now we're going to, let's say, the second year. So though, when do we eat it? We eat it like they ate it in Egypt, before Chatzos, before midnight. But still matzahs of avav. Why? Because there's the revelation. There was already a revelation of redemption, and there's the revelation in general of how we perform mitzvahs through Matan Torah. Because now we already have the revelation. And therefore the Haggadah says, this is what the Haggadah is telling us. And Matzah Zu She'anu Ochlim, this matzah that we're eating tonight, every night of the Seder throughout the generations. It's the matzah. Like the matzah when the Jewish people left Egypt after the revelation. That because of the revelation, there was a protection in the matzah that they didn't become chametz on their own. Because the effect of the revelation was that there shouldn't be any chametz. The Rebbe continues. So see something footnote number 2 is what? So the Rebbe said this Maamar Yud Gimel Nissan going into this mamish like today. Yud Gimel Nissan, which is the Yortzeit, the end of the Yortzeit of the Tzemach Tzedek, going into the eve of B'dikas Chametz, which is the 14th, or the Yudalit. And he says in footnote number 2, which is the Yom HaLedus of the Rambam, the birthday of the Rambam, that he was born an hour and 1/3 after the midday, I'm assuming, of the 13th. So the Rebbe says like this, we could say, so like I said before, the matzahs that they ate after Egypt, after they left, after the revelation, is much harder than the matzahs before the revelation. Now the Rebbe says that the matzahs that we ate now are still harder than the matzahs, the second matzahs that they ate after Pesach. Because then it was still the flame Matan Torah. Although there was the revelation of the redemption, but there wasn't Matan Torah yet. Matan Torah only happened 50 days later. And the proof that you need to reach there is the fact that the Jewish people had to count 49 days of the Omer to get ready from leaving Mitzrayim to receiving the Torah. It means to say that the revelation of leaving Mitzrayim, as great as it was, and it was a revelation of redemption, it still wasn't, they weren't ready yet for the giving of the Torah. They had to wait 49 days. Because the fact is, we're eating the matzah today that's after, although there's the revelation of Hashem, but it's the revelation of after Matan Torah. Why they dim savoid the bekim Torah mitzvahs meshach kol hashana koydem Pesach, and not only that, because Torah was given, and now our not just the mitzvah of Matzah Pesach, but our whole lives throughout the year is saturated with avodah, and the avodah of the koach, of the power of Matan Torah. So now when we come to do each year the Pesach, you can't say we were like the Jewish people before, after they were redeemed, but before any avodah, and before the ability for the avodah to have an effect because of Matan Torah, with the power of Matan Torah. So therefore, the whole year when we're coming to eat Pesach, we have tremendous amount of avodah throughout the year. We're gilin aliyos, therefore the revelation of being a matzah within the mitzvahs themselves is on a much higher scale because we're after the whole year of avodah. Like I just said, that Shavuos comes after the 49 days of Omer, therefore it's much greater revelation. With regard to the revelation of leaving Egypt. Although Yetzias Mitzrayim, like I said, is a great God himself came and redeemed the Jewish people. But it was not avoided. It was initiated from above. God came and took us out. The whole reason why it says that the Jewish people that Pesach is the level of tzaddikim, it's not because it was a void of tzaddik. Because Jewish people will have the angel said by the Red Sea, what's so special about the Jews? And it's brought down that the Rebbe Nechumya said that the Jewish people had to be given the mitzvahs of Dam Mil and Dam Pesach. They have to walk out, otherwise they'd be negative mitzvahs. They're nothing behind nothing. So what does it mean that Pesach is the Gilui Milmaila Tzadikim? It means to say, but the revelation comes from above, and I saw the Rebbe says, and then they were like a level of Gerish and Yisgair. They became converts. And a convert is it's like a child who's reborn. It's a clean slate. So although they didn't have merits, because they didn't have schusim, and if you wanted to look in their actual actions, you may find something, but it was a clean slate because it's like a convert, which is like a new baby. So therefore it's a level of tzaddikim. But not to say that's considered avoida. There was no avoida here. It was a revelation from above. And therefore, the was only temporary. In order to permeate something, it has to be connected with the serusa de la'ela. That's a response to the serusa tata. And even though we say many times that there's a serusa de tata, it's anila doidi, I'm to my beloved's to me. It's anila doidi is a serusa tata, and that's inspired by the Melech Besada. So we have anila doidi and doidi li's response, and then there's the avoid. Then there's a response shulamayla mi serusa tata that gives us even beyond that. But there has to be the foundation of this Rusla Tata of the efforts from below. So if there's no efforts from below, then it's temporary. There's nothing to hold on to. There's no keli. There's nothing to hold it. By then, avoided summer. When the Jewish people counted the Omer, started avoida, started to look into themselves. Chesed b'chesed, gvura b'chesed, perish b'chesed, gvura b'gvura, netzach b'netzach. So when the Jewish people worked on themselves, then that's avoida. Avoida is the tachton. They worked from below. That started after they left Egypt. So then the Jewish people, not only did they get the 49 gates of the efforts that they worked, which would be the Serusa de La'ela, the awakening from above, the response from above to our efforts. You work for something, you get it, right? Well, here's what you work, this is what you get. After we accomplish the 49 gates, then we get the Gam HaShar Nun, the 50th gate, which Shagam Sharnun Nimshach Idea saying it comes through our Vaida. If Tisperu Chamishim, you should count that there should be the 50 gates. Now you could go into what's the Rebbe emphasizing? It seems like the Rebbe saying a Chiddush. Why? Because we know Sharnun is something that you can't reach. We only actually count 49 days. We don't count the 50th day. But what does it say? Tisperu Chamishim? It's when you count 49 days and you're gifted the 50th day. But it's connected to the fact that you counted the 49 days. Ubashar Nun Gupa, and the Rebbe even emphasizes, it's not just talking about just the 50th gate, that's like kind of the completion, the cover on top of the vessel that you created. It's not just the 50th that's connected to the 49, because the 49 has to have the 50. Dugmas Arach, like we say about Keser, there's the Keser, which is called Arach and Atik. Arach is the long complexion, which is connected to Ratzin, which is though it's Keser, it's surrounding, it's a crown, it's above the head, it's not within the person, but it's connected to the person. If you're going from the midas downwards, so Ratzin creates the Chacham. Because you have a Ratzin for something, so therefore you start thinking about it. So using your intellect. So that's the way Kesser is the lower level of Kesser, the lower level of the crown, how it's connected to the Esther spheres. It says even greater than that. There's a level of the 50th. It's not because it's the 50th of the 49. It's the 50th on its own. It's like it's a gate of its own. Dugmas Atik is like the pleasure, which is not connected to any of the 10 mitos or the 10 spheros. This is surely much greater than Tzis Mitzrayim. And all that is given to the Jewish people through Avodah. So then if that's after Avodah, and the matzah we're eating throughout the year, after Avodah throughout the year, is much higher than the matzah the Jewish people ate, even after they left Egypt, after the revelation of Melech Malachim Kadosh Baruch Hu Goyla. Yesh lahosef der be'az. The milas hamatzah shel Ochlim la'achar matan Torah, al hamatzah shel achar chatzos shayaz, he noisef al shehagilei b'hamatzah shel Ochlim b'yedei kedimus avodah b'kiyum atar mitzvos kodim Pesach. It says not only does it mean that the matzah that we're eating now is greater than the matzah that the Jewish people ate after they left Egypt, after there was the revelation of and the redemption, which is matzahs with a vav. The Rebbe says it's not just because that only because that throughout the year we have avodah, so therefore we're on a much higher level. It's like the 49 gates. So therefore the matzah is on a higher level. So here the Rebbe introduces kind of a mixed idea, which is what the Alter Rebbe really asks, that there's something else greater about the matzah we eat now, not just because it's after avodah, and therefore it's much harder. It's matzahs with a vav in his revelation, but actually eating the matzah is itself a mitzvah. There was no mitzvah to eat matzah after they left Egypt. It's just that they didn't. It was a technicality and nothing else to eat because the dough didn't rise. Here we have actually not just that the mitzvah that we're eating a matzah at a much higher level, but eating the matzah itself is a mitzvah. It's like we said, like the verse says, the only reason they ate matzah because they had nothing else to eat because the bread didn't have time to rise. There was a revelation from above, and therefore there was no chametz, and therefore there was automatically matzah. There was no effort in mitzvah. And the matzah we're eating now is not just the matzah because it's revelation, but we earned it. It's an avodah, because if there's a mitzvah, there's an avodah. But the Rebbe is saying is an amazing thing, that a mitzvah is not just a technicality. The very fact that there's a mitzvah means there has to be an avodah for the mitzvah. And when we eat the matzah now, so we have the combination of that's what the Rebbe says, it's a combination of the two matzahs. It's like the matzah before, which had a mitzvah, the matzah afterward, which after the gilui. Nevertheless, before Matan Torah, before the matzahs we eat today are before chatzos, like the matzahs after chatzos, meaning it has a hamshacha, has matzahs with a vav, but with the mitzvah component, which means with a avodah component, which is also why there has to be shimur, because we have shimur matzah over there. They didn't need shimur. Why? Because like the Alter Rebbe says, it's because they had the Moshe Aaron, and therefore there was no potential for chametz. Where in Mashenki now we don't have the revelation of a Moshe Aaron, and therefore we're vulnerable. But also when there's a mitzvah involved, then there's a vulnerability. Therefore we have to understand the Rebbe says, what does it mean? Matzah Zu She'anu Ochlim Ashum Shlo Hispek Batzekas Avosenu Shel Avosenu L'Hachmitz Harei HaMatzah She'anu Ochlim Ma'achri Matan Torah Yesh B'Mailas Havodah B'Mail D'Kim Mitzvah. So why do we say in that God if that's the case? That in our matzah that we have now, let's see the footnotes. I wanted to learn the footnotes, but we're going to skip the footnotes for now. I'll try to actually just concentrate on finishing the Maamar. That why do we say that the matzah in the Haggadah, the matzah we eat now is like the matzah after Matan Torah? Because we actually say that there's two components. There's the matzah. First of all, the matzah that we eat now is much greater than the matzah that they ate after Yetziat Mitzrayim. Sorry. Because then it was only there's no avodah, there's no Matan Torah, and also there was no mitzvah. So we're really also connected to the first matzah, which had a mitzvah. So why are we choosing the part that's after revelation versus the idea that there's a mitzvah, and the versus the idea that's much greater than the revelation than they had after Yetziat Mitzrayim? Was that goof a mitzvah after Matan Torah? That's not just any mitzvah; it's a mitzvah after Matan Torah. We're making it sound that the matzah we're eating now is just like the matzah that you have to Matan Torah. It's not, because we need shmirah. There is just the revelation itself protected it, but there wasn't a avodah. There was no mitzvah. They were kind of they were so taken care of that even the revelation wasn't vulnerable. The Rebbe answers Avir was Ki mitzvah Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim who sapper in Yetziat Mitzrayim k'may shayos. Now, this is the end of the day. It's not just an experience of now. We have to combine the experience of now with the way it was. So we want to know, we're reliving the story. Matzah, at the end of the day, is to say this to relive the story. And yes, the story is happening now, but we're telling the story the way it happened then. So if we want to connect now to what was happening then, we're saying that we want you to know that what's happening, what you're doing now, is connected to this part of what happened then, to the matzahs after the way they ate after the revelation, after the redemption. But another point. We have to know that there's also the what we say in the Haggadah. If we wouldn't leave Egypt, then we would still be before Matan Torah. We would still be in Egypt. So therefore, a person shouldn't get so excited. I'm after leaving Egypt and after Matan Torah. So what's so important about the matzahs they ate then? We're so higher than that. You're only higher than them because that happened. If that wouldn't have happened, you would still be there before the matzahs, before the first matzahs. You'd still be slaves. We would still be slaves. Therefore, we're actually not just talking about what happened then. We have to relive it. Because that happened, therefore we're here now. A lot of times in life we forget how we got here. Who sacrificed what for us to get here? Therefore, when we tell the story of leaving Egypt in the Haggadah, we say Matzah She'anu Ochlim. We're connecting our matzah now because then, yes, the Jewish people left and it was before Matan Torah, but there was a revelation, and the revelation made it so that the Jewish people were able to eat matzah and it didn't become leavened. The God revealed himself and he redeemed them. Although we're connected to also like the mitzvah of eating the matzah, like the Jewish people ate in the same system, basically eating matzah with the Korban Pesach. But we have to know, so we have at the end of the day is like the Rebbe is combining two things. When the Jewish people ate the matzah, then in Mitzrayim, although it was nowhere near, there was no revelation, but they did a mitzvah. God told them to do it. It was before Matan Torah, before the revelation, before the redemption, but it was still a mitzvah. So we have the mitzvah component now. At the same time, we also connected with the idea of after the revelation, because we're able to be effective, and there's a hamshach now because we did avodah. This therefore, when we talk the story, we say Matzah Zu She'anu Ochlim. This matzah we're eating now, because it's also connected to the idea that the Jewish people, when they left Egypt, after the revelation, that the bread didn't turn leavened, didn't become chametz. Because God redeemed them. Here the Rebbe says, aside from the mile, the matzah kohen chatzos, which means the ma'is of avodas atachtim kimitziv HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because we're fulfilling the mitzvah. That was then, it was before Matan Torah, but the same idea. We have a mitzvah now. We also have the ma'al b'shachar chatzos, a ma'al delay hispik lahachmitz she actually is b'chametz. We also have the revelation that there's also a certain makif protection. Although we have to have shmur matzah, and like the Alter Rebbe says today, we don't have Moshe Aaron, but we have. But if we're able to tap in to this, to the second part of the matzah, where we feel that revelation, that itself will be the shmira. Because of revelation, so that's what we actually. If I may just add a little bit to the Rebbe's words here, that when we say like God, the Matzah Zu She'anu Ochlim, actually it's not just a statement of what's happening. It's also an avoid itself to say that we want to connect to such a revelation. It should be such a level of, just like the Jewish people left, it was clear that there was a revelation. There's a clear hakar, there's a clear das of what was happening, and therefore there was no chametz because the revelation made it so to protect the person. So too now we have to know that yes, we have a mitzvah and there's a voida. But if you connect to the part of why the Jewish people left after they left Egypt, they had such a consciousness of the revelation, then you're also be protected from the chametz. That itself will protect you. And the voida is to connect to that, to realize that, to pay attention that this is the miracle that's happening now. She actually is b'chametz. It can't become chametz, but we have to do an avoida to do that. That's what we say in the Haggadah. Because of the revelation, and therefore we're protected. Now we have something else. There's also that when you have Matan Torah, when Torah is given, it makes every part of a mitzvah much greater. Mitzvah like a mitzvah that's done after the giving of the Torah. The Rebbe even adds greater. is the idea that that's the matzah. We know that whenever there's something that's not biblical, if it's rabbinic, and and still a mitzvah, means it's so high that it can't even come down in a way of a biblical, and that's why even a minhag is even more important. So therefore, when it comes to achilas matzah, we even have the component of the Shvi Pesach, which is rishus, which is voluntary. Shamayim lechayev, which is even above the obligation, doesn't need to be an obligation. Shemein achil d'lasav, it's going to be like as the Mashiach comes. Just finish the Maamar. Yeratzin leibi the pratishim samim kenog when it's in stock. There it says after the Maamar the Rebbe gave out stock. It's just like every year. Pesach finishes with Shvi Pesach, which is the seventh day of Pesach, which is the day of the splitting the Red Sea. But Yisrael is even more than that. Shasim the Chol Yimei Pesach, B'chutz La'aretz, when it comes to the way it's celebrated outside of Eretz Yisrael, is an Achron Pesach, the eighth day of Pesach. Shabbai Mer Gila Haaretz Mashiach, and the eighth day is the revelation of Mashiach, which is the day of Mashiach. So we do the Mashiach to the Shachin Gam B'Haftarah, the Achron Pesach, he would be as a Mashiach there for the Haftarah is in Yeshayim. And this is why it's the eighth of Pesach. That God is going to take the Jewish people from the 7 places. Shalgalas of exile, Ashur, Mitzrayim, the world of Ashur, which today is not really a country. Egypt, Bashmini, which is Hayam, the islands. The islands could be each person for their own to try to figure out if that's what we're talking about. Places like Australia or even the United States is considered an island. Yivim the Matzah Zu She'anu, so with the 7 and the islands is 8. That's why Shmini Pesach, which is the redemption, the number of Shmini is connected to Mashiach. Matzah Zu She'anu Ochlim, then we'll have the promise, the fulfillment of the promise, Pashtus, in the most simplest terms, with all its details, and also we should internalize, which is talking about the happening of the coming of Mashiach, where it's going to have the effect of Mal Ha'aretz De'esavaya, that the whole world will be full of the knowledge of God, as the sea covers, as the water covers the sea. Okay, we didn't do it. So, but Ian, and we didn't do the Ha'aretz. That's to be finished the Maamar. For joining. Have a wonderful Chag